Thresh matchups. Today I'm gonna be yapping, I'm gonna be drawing a little bit probably, and I'm gonna talk about the different matchups and how it works out for Thresh. The tiers we have today. We have unplayable, we have pretty hard in it, we have skill matchup, we have Thresh favored, and we have thanks for the LP. So let's get into it. Alistar is pretty easy to play against. He's an engaged support that you can shut down pretty quickly, and you know, after he goes in with his WQ, you can easily get the lantern off before he can get the stun. Alistar is usually Thresh favored, I would say. Let's say you see your ADC and you think that Alistar is about to go on him. Don't hug your ADC already, don't cling on him like this, because then the Alistar will win the fight. You want to create some distance between you two and create a safety net with your lantern. So when Alistar goes on the AD carry, then you can stand back and lantern them away. And 90% of the time, you'll get your lantern off before he can get the stun. So it's never a very horrible trade. And you outrange him the rest of the lane usually, so it's pretty Thresh favored, I would say. Anivia is not very common, but if I played against an Anivia, I could imagine that she could outspace Thresh a lot. She could probably wall me off when I'm about to engage, and she could probably be a pain in the ass. So for that reason, I'm gonna put her in pretty hard in it. I mean, Annie as well. Who plays Annie support, man? What is his list? I don't play against Annie that much, but I think if I did, it would be more Thresh favored than Annie favored. Just because she doesn't have something that can shut me down extremely quick. She has her stun, sure, but she doesn't really have any tools that can sort of block me. Alright, over to Bard. I like playing against Bard. He feels pretty weak in lane. This depends a lot if the Bard is good. If it's a very good Bard that can look for good Qs and connect with minions, and especially when they can Q you together with your ADC, then it's a little bit of a danger. But usually when I play against the Bard, I feel pretty free to do whatever the fuck I want. And if I hit a hook on the Bard, he will take a lot of damage because he's a squishy champion. So I'm going to put him in Thresh favored. Blitzcrank. So Blitzcrank is another hook champion, right? The thing with Blitzcrank is that his hook is very linear and it has a lot of kill potential. But that's it. So Blitzcrank is a very strong laner in the way that he can get a hook and kill very quickly, but later in the game he is very restricted to his role as the hook bot, literally. Blitzcrank will be restricted into his role of only hitting hooks, while Thresh still has options of playing on the back foot and playing defensively with his lantern, or he can act as a Blitzcrank and hook enemies to engage as well. So I think Blitzcrank is going to be put in skill matchup for me. I think when you play against a Blitzcrank, it boils down to who can have the most impact. Blitzcrank is the one that's going to be running around trying to hook people and getting kills for his team, while you're going to try to float around and adapt as quickly as you can to what he's doing. Kind of like shadowing him in basketball, you know? Kind of blocking for him the whole time. If he gets a hook, you get a lantern. If he tries to go aggressive, you punish him and hook him and kill him, you know? Stuff like that. Brand is not something I play against a lot, but he is a champion with a lot of range and a lot of poke damage. In lane, this would be pretty difficult if he's not completely boosted. He can probably outrange me a lot, and he can poke me a lot down in lane, which is something Thresh Sett suffers from quite easily. So I would put this in pretty hard in it. And Brand is also one of those champions that can probably shut you down if you're going mobility boots. And mobility boots is usually very strong on Thresh to be around on the map and have impact. But Brand can hit any of his abilities and your mobies are gone forever, you know? Braum is also one of those engaged champions that don't really do much against your ADC if you're good with your lantern. If Braum gets a Q on your ADC, you want to instantly react with your lantern and bail them out. And you do this by standing with a little bit distance from your ADC, so you can transport them to safety when they're out of position. So Braum, for me, goes in the same tier as Alistar in Thresh favored, because they're sort of the same kind of opponent. Galio, I don't play against Galio support, man. Who made this list? But I mean, I think Galio was pretty similar to Alistar in the way he engages. And for that reason, I also think you can counter him pretty easily. And Galio's E is extremely easy to flay. If you flay backwards, you can stop it instantly, like this. A Galio support, I think I would actually put one below and say thanks for the LP if he goes Galio support. Gragas, you know, there's a lot of champions here that don't really get played in support. Gragas support, I think would be kind of terrifying. You would think it's kind of the same as an Alistar or Galio or Engage support, but I've experienced that Gragas can be extremely annoying even if he doesn't hit his body slam. And he's a very good champion to mess with people's positions, right? I think Gragas would be more of a skill matchup. Janna, I know a lot of people would say this is unplayable because Janna is a very speedy champion. She can run super fast and dodge your hook a lot of the time if she's not horrible. But I've had a lot of experiences with a Janna where I can actually play the game pretty decently. But nonetheless, she's extremely fast and makes getting hooks very difficult. And even if you get a hook on their ADC or the Janna, she will, you know, have her ult and shield to stand in the way. So I would put her in pretty hard in it. Karma! Oh, don't get me started on this champ. Now, this champion, her ult Q destroys THRESH. She has longer range than you. She has her shield that can speed her or the ally up to dodge your hook, and her binding is extremely strong against you because you have no mobility as a THRESH. I think a lot of Karma's kit counters THRESH, and she can also outrange you with a lot of it. So I'm actually gonna put her in unplayable because this lane is really fucking annoying. Leona is also one of those engaged champions, like maybe Alistar, but she is a bit more disgusting to go against. She's not very easy to stop in the same way an Alistar is, because if she's hit an E on your ADC, you can't very easily stop her. But you can still provide the same sort of rule of standing a little bit back as a safety net in this lane to bail your ally out if they get hit by a Leona E. And later in the game when she gets ult, you can also bail allies fairly quickly out with your lantern. But if she gets an ult off and then E and then Q, the champ will probably die before you get to bail them out. With the Leona matchup, it usually comes down to holding her away at an arm's distance, you know? You are the range champ, your hook has a lot longer range than any of her stuff, and if you can keep her at an arm's length, poke her down, and, you know, make her useless by feeling like she has to chase you down, you will win. So I'm gonna put her in skill matchup because it comes down to if you can hold her at an arm's length or if she mushes your face in, right? Lulu is not a very hard champion to face on their own, but when I play against the Lulu, I usually play against some pretty artillery heavy champion, something like Kog'Maw or something like Kog'Maw. So Lulu herself is not super difficult to play against, but I do kind of struggle playing against Lulu because she usually comes with a pretty poke heavy ADC as well. So the Lulu lane usually consists of being poked down a lot and just collecting the few scraps you can get. If you see someone out of position, you can capitalize and maybe scrap up a kill or two, but usually this lane results in farming and starting to roam after a while, because you don't get that many kills in my experience. But the lane itself is pretty difficult because she pokes you down a lot, you feel like you're getting held away a lot of the time, so I'm gonna put her in pretty hard in it. Lux lane. Yeah, I don't play against this champion that much either. I don't struggle with it that much. To me, the only real stopper she has to your engage is her Q. If she hits your Q, your engage is cock blocked. You're stopped. But if she misses her Q and she only has her E, you can probably catch up to her, and she doesn't have any mobility. This lane is pretty playable, and it comes down to how well you can dodge the Qs specifically, because those are the major threat against Thresh. If you can dodge the Qs and you can get Swifties pretty quickly, and be good at dodging her Q and E, you can be extremely dangerous against her because she has no mobility to escape you. Yeah, so Lux is, to me, a pretty skill matchup because she's not super unplayable, but you need to dodge the abilities and try to look for small openings. Maokai is one of the most meta champions right now. This champion is extremely busted, and for many people just a way to get free low. But in my experience, playing against a Maokai as Thresh is not very difficult. You can very easily hit a hook on him if he W's on your ally. I would say Maokai is a stronger version of Alistar right now. He can have a very like brain dead failsafe engage with his W. I would say in the Maokai lane, your Lantern is a very, very important tool. In the same way, when you play against an Alistar or an engage support, you want to create some distance between you and your ADC, and you want to Lantern them exactly the moment they get W'd by Maokai. He engages, he knocks them in or something like that, and you want to have the Lantern ready at the same time so they take as little damage as possible. And the rest of the lane, he's a melee champion and you're a ranged champion. So you can get a hook off on him, keep him a little bit away, and poke him down pretty easily. This lane feels pretty 50-50 to me because it is very, very playable, but he can also be extremely impactful both in your lane and in other lanes because he has such a brain dead engage. So I'm gonna put him in skill matchup. Morgana is a champion that a lot of people pick when they want to counter pick Thresh, and that is something I don't really understand. Sure, she can block the hook with her spell shield, but there are a lot of ways to play around this. In this lane, I usually play around bushes a lot. If you play out of vision, either inside a bush or around a corner, it makes it very hard for her to react to your hook instantly. And a lot of the Morgana players I play against are not really Morgana players, but they pick her for the counter pick. So if I see this and I see that it's not a good Morgana that knows how to use her spell shield properly, you can abuse it a lot. You either do it by playing out of vision, or you walk up in a position where you can both hook her or the ADC. So she has to either choose one of them to spell shield or react very quickly, which is something they don't really do if they're not experienced at the champ. So I'm gonna do a hot take here and say that this is actually Thresh favored. Nami is the easiest champion to play against in the whole game for Thresh. She has a little fucking bubble, and that is super easily dodgeable. Sure, you'll probably get a Nami Lucian lane, and the Lucian is gonna be a little bit scary. But to me, both the lane and mid and late game are super, super easy to play against a Nami. Because if you hit one hook on her, she is dead. She is 100% dead. No exception, because she is extremely squishy. Only a very good Nami could make my life a little bit difficult. So Nami, thank you so much for the free LP. Nautilus is another hook champ, but he's more on the engage side of hook champions, as he kind of pulls himself to the enemies and, you know, smacks them face on. I think Nautilus is pretty easy to play against if you just apply the rule I've been yapping about for a lot of these champions. You want to do the safety net. You stand with a little bit distance at all times to your ADC, and if they get hooked in any way or form, you Lantern them instantly. You give them the shield and they won't take that much damage in the trade. And he's very easily pokeable down in the rest of the lane, which kind of makes up for it. Some of you maybe wonder, what if Nautilus hooks you instead of the ADC? Because you can't Lantern yourself away, right? I usually run Aftershock on Thresh these days. So if he hooks you, you just want to flame as fast as you can and proc the Aftershock. And this way you'll have some bonus armor and magic resist for the fight, and you won't take that much damage in the trade. And when he's done smacking around with his anchor, he hooked you, he punched you a little bit, and he like, you know, stomped the ground. When he's done with his stuff, you can hook him afterwards for a pretty good trade usually. And if you can do the same thing I mentioned with Leona, keep him at like an arm's length and just kite him a little bit, it's a pretty easy matchup. So I would say this is Thresh favored. Neeko is also a champion I don't really play against in support, but she is a very ranged champion. She has a shit ton of range. She has annoying poke with her Q, and her root can be very cock blocking for Thresh. Pretty much the same as playing against an Anivia in terms of the vibes, you know. So I'm gonna put her in pretty hard. Pantheon is also one of those champions you don't see that much in support, but I think this is a very easy matchup for Thresh. The lane can be a little bit scary, as he can engage on your ADC very quickly and deal a shit ton of damage. In the early days, you want to be a little bit cautious because that motherfucker is scary. But the thing is, when he's engaging, he has to click on a target. He has to jump in and go directly at a target. So if you can see who he's going for, and usually this is a strong carry, you know, the ADC or a artillery mage that has no mobility, and if you can hook him right after he does it, he's usually a pretty free kill, and it's usually a very, very free champion to bully and kite as Thresh. So Pantheon, thank you for the LP, brother. Poppy is also a pretty rare champion to play against as support. I think the lane mostly comes down to how well you can flay her when she engages. And if you're a god at seeing when she's engaging and you can flay her before she can get any stun off, she'll be probably pretty useless. But I would say she still is a pretty scary champion sometimes. She can not only catch your allies off guard, but she can catch you off guard because you have no escape, you have no mobility. I think the most dangerous thing about a Poppy is if she can catch you with her E. If she slams you into the wall, you cannot save yourself in any way, and it's gonna be a pretty lethal trade usually. I'm gonna put this in skill matchup because I think it boils down to how well you can hold her at an arm's length, as we've mentioned probably a million times now. Pyke is a champion that is a lot stronger than you in lane. I think he's stronger than pretty much anyone in lane. He is a huge threat, and if it's a good Pyke, he can sneak past you and yoink your ADC away. And if he hits you with a hook and stun, you're also pretty fucked because you have no mobility and Thresh is pretty squishy on his own. So Pyke is a very, very strong laner, but the longer the game goes on, he falls off. The Pyke fall off is a phenomenon that needs to be studied because Pyke is, in my experience, extremely useless later in the game if his team isn't already snowballing. Later in the game, I would say that Thresh is a lot better than Pyke because Pyke is, you know, restricted very much to engaging and killing and executing, kind of like a rolling snowball. If he doesn't get a good early, then I think he will suffer a lot in the late game. But in conclusion, when I play against a Pyke, the early game is all about surviving, trying to give the enemy as little as possible because he's going to be definitely the stronger champion in lane. The later the game goes on, the easier it gets, and the less useful he is, and the more versatile and dominant you are in team fights for sure. But I think we put him in skill matchup because his early game is stronger, but his late game is a shit ton weaker. Rakan feels like a very unfair champion to play against IMO. He can hit a Q and heal his ADC. He can W in and E out and be gone. So in lane, he feels like a wall. This is a weird wall. He feels like a fortress between you and their ADC. The lane is pretty much a stalemate. Nothing much happens. You know, if he hits a good W, you can lantern your ADC away. If he engages on you, you can flay him and get the aftershock and trade. But this is just all a very standard textbook lane, and who can, you know, hit the most skills, who can dodge the most stuff, who can space better, all that stuff. I'm not going to go into detail about that, but I think it's a pretty 50-50 lane, so I'm going to put it in skill matchup. Senna has a shit ton of range. She can poke you down very easily with her Q, and her W can keep you pretty far away from her, which makes her a pretty annoying champion to play against. The thing that kind of weighs up for this is that she is super squishy. So if you first hit a hook, she will either be down to 1 HP and has to reset, or she'll just be gone completely. But I think a good Senna can be very good at keeping the right space and being out of range for a hook, while also poking you down and being annoying as fuck in lane. So Senna, you're pretty hard, aren't you? Shen is on this list as well. I've played against a Shen support once, I think, and he was pretty scary, because if he hits a taunt and he starts queuing and fucking slapping the ADC around with his stick, then he can deal quite a lot of damage, and his W will also stop auto attacks, which makes him pretty strong of a laner. But the good thing is that, you know, you can cancel his E with your Flay, so depending on how good you are with it in lane, you can either make his life hell or your life can be hell. It's all depending on how good you are with your Flay in this lane, I think. Because his E is the starter, and if he doesn't hit it, he's not very useful. And if he does hit it, he will destroy your ADC. So I would say this is a skill matchup as well. Sona is a super hyper scaling champion, right? Early game, she is piss weak, and Thresh early game is super strong. So this lane is very fun for Thresh. She is just trying to survive. Sona is just trying to survive early. She's trying to scale up and be annoying later in the game. I think Thresh has such a good scaling, both with his souls and just in terms of his abilities being very strong throughout the whole game, that I don't think playing against Sona is difficult at all. I think it's actually very easy. Early in the game, you want to bully her as much as possible. You can go 5-0 in the lane, 10-0 in the lane. Regardless if you get fed in lane or not, it is pretty easy to play against the Sona, because throughout the whole game, she will be a free kill if you hit one hook on her. Playing against the Sona is pretty free LP. Soraka is a quite annoying champion. If she's good at using her E, she can shut you down with it, and if she pokes well, she can be a little bit annoying. But the good thing with playing as Soraka is that she can E, but your hook still goes off. So if you start winding up your hook and she E's you and places the zone, your hook will still go off, which is a weird interaction. But if you hit the hook then and you are rooted, she will also be stunned. It's not a very difficult lane if she's not very good at using her utility, holding you away by poking you down with the Q and stopping you when you're about to hook. I don't think Soraka is annoying in lane, but I will put her in skill matchup, because I think this comes down to how well you can find her. If you ignore her completely throughout the whole game, she will probably win, because she has healed her allies a shit ton and made the fight unplayable for you. But if you can find her and capitalize when you actually find her out of position, and you can focus her instead of the other people in fights, then you will come a long way. But I think all in all, Soraka is a skill matchup. Swain is one of those champions I don't play against that much. I think he's been getting a little bit more popular. I actually struggle a little bit if I play against the Swain. It feels like he can outrange you, and to me his hook is very difficult to dodge, and that leads to a very disgusting poke usually. And you know, later in the game, when he has ult and he's this like raid boss in fights, hooking him isn't really that huge, right? Because you hook him, but you can't really hook him away that far, and you can't really like stop his ults. He is kind of difficult actually to me. What you should do if you play against a Swain and you struggle with this as well is try to ignore him as much as possible and go for the ADC. Because I think Swain is a champion you want to avoid a little bit. He's pretty annoying, but you want to look to kill the ADC because he doesn't have a lot of defensive tools. But Swain to me is pretty difficult, so I'm gonna put him in this one. I don't play against Tahm Kench. I don't play against Tahm Kench a lot either. To me, he's pretty easy to play against because after his knockup is done, you can just plop a lantern down for your ADC and they'll be out pretty instantly. So to me, this lane is just the usual: keep him at an arm's length, keep him a little bit away, stand behind for the safety net, and he won't be able to do that much IMO. So I would say it's Thresh favored, a little bit at least. Yuumi feels very nice to play against. To me, the hardest part about the Yuumi matchup is actually the early game, because she can poke you down pretty frequently, and if you hit a hook on the ADC, she can still keep them fairly alive, especially if it's something like a Nyla or Samira. So early in the game, I feel like she can actually keep the ADC fairly well alive, and you don't usually get a lot of kills if it's not a very immobile ADC, and it's a pretty like shit synergy between them. But I think later in the game, it's fairly easy to play against the Yuumi, and if you hit the target that Yuumi sits on, they will probably die in teamfights anyways, because she won't be enough to sort of keep them alive, in my opinion. The main threat is if a bruiser, like a jungler or a very fed top laner, gets the Yuumi on them, because then they'll actually be very scary. But that's not gonna happen, right? Right? But usually when I play against the Yuumi, I win like a fair 80-90% of my games, because she's not able to do enough, simply. Okay, now we're starting to get to the spicy ones. Zilean is really annoying, okay? Him in lane, zoning you out with the bombs, and stunning you when you're even trying to just walk up for farm, or trying to get a hook off, or anything like that, is really, really disgusting to play against in lane. If he and the ADC are good at playing with the minions and denying my hook, then Zilean is a disgusting, disgusting champion to play against. And if he slows you down, you have no escape at all, because you have no mobility really, and he can easily get 2 bombs off on you, which is just very, very painful, honestly. And later in the game, when you try to pick up a kill and you hit a nasty ass hook, he comes in with his big ass clock and he just... Luckily, this champion is not played a lot. Don't buff him right. Please. Please! Zilean, extremely difficult. So I'm gonna put him in unplayable. And Zyra is in the same dimension. She has the same vibe as the Zilean. Her plants will be super annoying all the time. And if she's above room temperature IQ, she can block a lot of your hooks as well with them. So this lane is pretty unplayable. And even later in the game, if you just get tagged by one single tick by a plant, one small pea from a pea shooter in Plants vs Zombies, and you lose all your speed if you go Mobies. So never go Mobies against her, ignore her existence completely, and try to go elsewhere and be useful on the map. She is just... no. Zyra is usually my ban actually, because she's played a fair amount, and if I play against her, I struggle, man. So she is 100% unplayable for me. To me, Rell is actually pretty annoying to play against. You would think she's probably in the same boat as like an Alistar or a Nautilus, because they sort of do the same things and have the same kind of role in the game. For some reason, I feel like Rell is a lot more difficult to play against. I think a lot of it comes because I don't have that much experience against her, so I struggle knowing what to flay and what to kind of peel for. And if she catches you, then you will suffer a lot usually, because you have no mobility, and if she ults you and pins you down and knocks you up and all types of shit, you will very quickly notice that you are a squishy champion and not a tank. But usually, if you're good enough, you can kind of kite her and hold her at an arm's distance. So Rell is pretty hard. But there we go. Milio is something you'd think is probably horrible. You think in theory that the Q will be insanely annoying, but I don't really suffer a lot from this usually. Milio is kind of the same interaction as a Soraka. The Milio interaction is very similar to the Soraka one. If you start your hook and he knocks you back, the range of the hook will still be the same as it was originally. He's not very painful to play against, but in my experience, you don't get that much from trades versus him. Even if you hit a hook on their ADC or him, he will somehow come out on top with his shields and his healing and all types of stuff. I don't find it super difficult in lane. I don't find I'm getting bullied, but he's also quite a big mosquito when it comes to fights and to keeping his team alive. I think it's a bit of a skill matchup, honestly, because against Milio you'll have to do a lot more than just hook a few enemies and kill them. You'll have to play very well around your kit, you have to pick the right targets to get in a fight. It's a lot more factors that play into the game when you play against the Milio. I think Milio is a skill matchup. Put him in, please, please. There we go. I have Twitch here, but he's gonna represent most of the poke supports in the game. The main thing when you play against these poke supports is to try not to get poked down. It is usually a pretty difficult task, but biscuits help a lot with this in lane. And you want to try to sneak a hook in between minion waves and play a little bit out of vision and just make yourself a very stealthy appearance. Imagine you're playing a stealth game and you're trying to sneak through a whole building without getting seen or heard by anyone. You're just trying to sneakily get some kills in. And in THRESH's case, you want to try to get some sneaky hooks off, you want to get some good trades, but you don't want to show that much of yourself and make a very big appearance in the lane, because that makes you very easy to poke down in these type of things. But I would say in higher ranks, especially if they're good and they know what they're doing, it can be a very difficult matchup. So you will want to try to play this stealth game type thing, but it's usually pretty difficult. I think it's hardest in lane, because that's when they will poke you the most. Late game in team fights, when you can hook them and they're dead instantly, that's where you really shine, and you just want to wait as much as you can for that. So I'm gonna put him in skill matchup, because you're just trying to survive, really, and get to the late game fights where you truly shine. Why is Sett on this list? This is my final results. Let me know what you guys think. I'm very open to having any discussions in the comment section. So honestly, I'm very down to make the comment section a full battlefield of arguments and comments and opinions. So let me know what you guys think. By the way, I saw that I forgot a couple of champions like Renata, Taric, Seraphine. Renata is okay. I think she's Thresh favored. She's not that big of a deal. Taric and Seraphine, disgusting, nasty. I also want to note that I recorded this video a while ago, so some of the takes may be outdated, and I've also gotten better as a player, so some of these have changed a little bit, because remember, this is coming from a diamond point of view. I know I am diamond. I'm not amazing at the game, so these takes may be diamond takes, you know? But yeah, I guess that's the most important thing to say, that this list is a personal list, not, you know, facts. So yeah, do you think this list is accurate, or would you put Yuumi up here, Zyra down here? Let me know down in the comments if there's anything you would have changed, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.